Hello people, Andrew here again, here to talk about comics from a reader, collector, speculator, investor point of view, in that order of importance to myself. Today I'm looking at the Fantastic Four, the Bronze Age, which pretty much, we'll call it the decade of the 70s, from 71 till to 1980. So it ran from about issue earlier than 103. Well, I'll start at 103 because I did the silver up to 103 because the 102 is the end of the Jack Kirby Stan Lee run. Jack Kirby left after 102. Stan Lee continued writing until issue 125, and then a number of other writers and artists took over the book. So right into it, is it worth reading? Well, if you're a Fantastic Four fan like myself, then yes, it's worth reading. If you're just into the superhero genre and you enjoy a good adventure story, I do like this particular run, the Bronze Age run. It revisits a lot of the characters that have already been established in the Silver Age. You'll find a lot of Doctor Doom, Silver Surfer, Galactus. The Inhumans make a return. There are guest stars of other books. The Hulk, Power Man, we'll see some of those coming up. And there's some good stories. They do travel to some different alternate realities, dimensions. There are some new characters introduced, not as significant as the ones introduced in the Silver Age, but there are a couple of note. And I did like the artwork. The artwork after Kirby, you had John Romita Sr., you had John Buscema, you even had George Perez later on, and some stuff by Rich Buckler. And as far as the writers were concerned, quality writers, Roy Thomas, Marv Wolfman, Jerry Conway, all good writers, solid writers. So it was a good run. I did a check and find out they published every once in a while how many books they were releasing of a particular issue of Fantastic Four in a given month, and the average around this time throughout the 70s was 400 to 500,000 copies. It is much easier to find a high-grade Bronze Age Fantastic Four than it is to find a high-grade Silver Age Fantastic Four. And the cost is reflected in that as well. It's not as expensive to buy a Bronze Age, but the prices have been creeping up. And if you were just on average, I'm just talking price here, just at $20 a pop for a Bronze Age book, and there's 100 books in the Bronze Age, that would be a $2,000 bill. You're going to find books that are going to be a lot less, but you're also going to find some that are worth a lot more. And again, it'll all depend on the quality. When I say that at $20 a book, I'm looking at the quality of about a 7, around 7, 6 to 8, 7. That's your $20 book. Sometimes they go more, 50, 60 bucks. But overall, good read. Let's take a look at some of the details and some of what you might want to collect. If you are going to collect, you're going to collect it for the Fantastic Four. You might want to collect it for some of the artists, particularly George Perez. There's some first appearances, as I said, and other major characters. People will collect it for the Doom appearances, Silver Surfer, etc. Fantastic Four 110. This particular issue here is not anything special, other than it's a very sharp copy, and I'm happy to have it. But there was a printing error for X amount of issues where the thing is green in color, and the flesh tones of the remaining casts are also green in color. I'll call it, it's not really a rare book, certainly uncommon, and you're more likely to find the standard copy of this as opposed to the printed, the error printing error. I'm like, yes, you know what I mean. I would like to have one of those. That's one of the very few variant covers that I would be interested in, just because it was the printing error. Now, one of the books that tends to attract a lot of attention is whenever the Thing versus the Hulk. This was issue 112. Um, and a lot of people like this book. I think there's a better thing Hulk cover coming up, which doesn't cost nearly as much money. But this is early Bronze Age. I bought this one very cheap, but it was about 20 years ago. I only had to pay $5 for it, but it costs a lot more these days. And I don't think it's the best cover of the thing in the Hulk. It's like a boxing match poster. I find the one that is going to be coming up has got a little bit more action and shows a little bit more of what's going on. Still, this is another one of those Thing Hulk covers, and those that tend to attract attention. People like the Thing versus the Hulk. Was it a good story? It was pretty good. Interesting one here. What is this, 119? I think it's 119. Or is it 120? It's 119. Okay, so we're revisiting with the Black Panther. The story's okay. It's not one of the better ones that I would consider in the series, but it's not so bad. I'm bringing it to the attention here is because this was during a time when the Black Panther was referred to as the Black Leopard. There was a political movement called the Black Panthers happening in the early 70s, and to avoid any affiliation with that political group, they changed the name from the Black Panther to the Black Leopard. Once the Black Panther organization fell out of the news and was no longer a going concern on headlines, Black Leopard once again returned to being the Black Panther. This book bothers me. It bothers me a little bit because it's expensive. I paid $50 for this copy recently. It was the last book I needed to complete the run from 101 to 200, so I was going to have my eye out for it and looking for it. It's the first appearance of a character called Airwalker, who turns out to be a herald of Galactus. But his time in the Marvel Universe is very limited. He's got, I don't even think he has a dozen appearances, and then he's destroyed after the second issue of this one, but recreated later on, because that's what happens. But he has such a small impact on the Marvel Universe, and to charge such a high price for this book, for this first appearance. I saw a better copy before I bought this, 6 months before I bought this, for about $120. But I could, at the same time, I could buy a Hulk 141, the first appearance of Doc Samson, in the same condition for the same price. The Doc Samson is, to me, a much better buy than the first appearance of Airwalker. I did need it for the collection, so here it is. But I don't like to use the term overvalued, because the market dictates the value. The market says this one is an expensive book. You have to spend $200 plus if you want it in an 8 plus, 9 plus grade. It's just, to me, I would rather spend that money on something else. This one is fine for the collection. At someday I may improve upon its quality, but for now it's fine. This is just issue 125. This is the last Stan Lee issue. After this, of course, as I said, the other writers took over. Now, do we call this an homage or is it a swipe? But it pretty much duplicates the first issue of the Fantastic Four. It's issue 126, recreating the cover. I think it's a good recreation, and they're interesting. It's not. There's nothing too different about this as opposed to the first issue. I suppose the images of the characters are cleaned up to reflect their development artistically, the development of the characters. but overall it's pretty much the same cover. The one swipe that I do like of the Fantastic Four #1 is from an unlikely place. And that would be organic gardening. Gardening, sorry. Organic gardening. Uh, I, I was very happy and surprised to find this on Organic Gardening, but there it is. There's the FF1 cover swipe to sell you some ways on dealing with aphids and what have you. This is issue 128. Nothing too special about it other than the fact that it does contain a glossy insert. And the reason that's kind of significant is because there were not a lot of books that had glossy inserts around this period of time. If you are buying this in a store, in a bin, even if you're only paying $20 or whatever it is that you're paying for this book, it's worth it to open it up to make sure that the glossy insert is still there. During the 70s, kids were still kids and not... They're interested in the books for fun. They cut out Marvel value stamps. They cut out coupons to send away for this, that, or the other thing. They drew on the covers and on the inside. They folded them up and put them in their back pockets. They were disposable entertainment. And the glossy insert could have easily been removed and turned into a poster on a kid's bedroom wall. So if you're going to buy this particular one, look to make sure that it has the glossy insert. This one does, so I'm happy about that. This is one of the characters that I think is worth looking for. This is issue 129 and it introduces Thundra. Thundra has wandered through the Marvel Universe a little bit. She's not a ton, but she's visited other parts of it. She's like an Amazon warrior. She admires Ben Grimm, the Thing, because he's a real tough warrior, and that's the kind of person that she would like to be with. They ended up being friends, and Thundra did a little bit of walking around upon the Earth because she came from a different Earth, and there was a little bit of that stranger in a strange land vibe happening there, which was fun. That's always fun when you get a good character that is a stranger in a strange land. And Thundra, I think you'll see more of her coming up. This is not an expensive book. It's from the Bronze Age, and it's the first appearance of Thundra. And I think it's probably, I would rather spend $50 on a copy of this than on the first appearance of Airwalker. And compared to the two, a $50 book featuring Thundra would be in much better condition than a $50 book featuring Airwalker. So that is my opinion. $150, you're looking at the marriage of Quicksilver and Crystal, and an appearance of Ultron. I think that people overlook that Ultron makes another appearance here, as do the Avengers. They're kicking around somewhere in here, I believe, and there's a lot of guests at the wedding. And but it is the wedding of Quicksilver and Crystal. Sometimes you do wonder about the relationships that the people at Marvel put together and say, this is the couple that is going to be working together. And this was an odd choice. And their relationship has fed a number of different storylines because it is not the healthiest of relationships. Still, the wedding issue, $150. This one sort of holds a special spot for me, and again, it could be because of the nostalgia factor, but this is the actual first copy of the Fantastic Four that I ever bought off of a spinning rack. It's 1974, I believe it is. When I read it, it's like, I don't know what's going on, because I'm in the middle of this moving around different universes. They're entering the fifth dimension. Who is this guy? The Fantastic Four, I knew they were on TV. It wasn't that I didn't know who they were, but these other characters, I didn't know who Quicksilver was. I didn't know who Zemu was. So I could have easily have said this is not the book for me because I really don't know what's going on. But I usually gave a book a few issues before I would say yay or nay to it. So I continued to buy the next few issues of the Fantastic Four. I'm happy I did because I really liked the Fantastic Four, but there was a series that came pretty close after this that sold me. This one's written by Roy Thomas. This is during Roy Thomas's run. And, you're a kid, young teenager. If I was young, yeah, I guess so, around there. Not quite there. And two things. What's going on? It was a fun story where there were three worlds fighting one another. Each one had a method of attack, and each one had a method of defense. And then there was a hidden fourth world that was sort of masterminding the whole plot. And this was like a 4 or 5 issue, and they overcome it. Why I like the two things, why do you see two things, is because one of these alternate Earths had another group called the Fantastic Four, but the characters mutated differently. The one thing that you see here in the blue trunks, that's the thing from our world, but the one with sort of the brownish shirt, that's Reed Richards. I thought that was very interesting that you take a look at the same character, but they have, different personalities. They were different people with the similar superpowers. Not only some of they look identical. So that I was, surprised me, and I enjoyed that whole storyline itself. And I just recently read it and found that I enjoyed it as well. It's not deep, it's not anything like that, but it was a lot of fun. Sold me on the idea of the Fantastic Four. First Golden Age appearance of Marvel Boy. I'm just checking the number here, is 164. More importantly, I think, is the first appearance of Frankie Ray. And you're saying, who's Frankie Ray? Frankie Ray went on to become a Herald of Galactus. She was given the code name Nova as well as Nova. And so she was a Herald of Galactus. Sometimes it's not so much the first appearance of a character, although that makes some impact. You take a look at James Rhodes or Scott Lang. Their first appearance in Marvel Comics, that is worth a few dollars, but it's more so when they actually don their costume. When Rhodey becomes War Machine or Scott Lang becomes Ant-Man, that's the one that tends to attract value and dollars. But there is a place for the first appearance of that character. This is the first appearance of Frankie Ray, and as I say, the first Golden Age appearance of Marvel Boy, issue 164. This is the better Hulk cover I'm talking about from 167. I think I like the action in here. You see that the Hulk is making an attack, and the Fantastic Four are responding to that attack. You get to see some of Sue's abilities, and you get Human Torch out there. But I like the flying into your face punch by the Thing into the Hulk. This looks like it's going to be a nasty combat. It is and it isn't. Just a little bit of a spoiler here on this one. I really liked how they took down the Hulk in this, and it surprised me and gave me a lot more respect for Sue Storm. So, they can. Johnny Storm burns all the oxygen out of the air around the Hulk. Reed Richards wraps his arms all the way around the Hulk and holds him in position. And then Sue puts an air bubble over the Hulk's head. I say air bubble, it's not. It's a bubble that's drained of all air. So he has nothing to breathe. And as he's like losing consciousness, the thing comes up from behind and gives him a haymaker and knocks him out. And I thought that it was a good team up, but I thought, whoa, like you just shut down your air valve. That's that's like very, very powerful. The Thing ultimately did not like the way that this went down. He didn't like the way that the Hulk had been treated and has been treated like a monster, because often the Thing feels himself to be a monster. And so by the end of that issue, he teams up with the Hulk for this issue. So now you've got the Thing and the Hulk versus the remainder of the Fantastic Four. Interesting. Again, it was a good story. Good read. Things always go bad for the Thing. Well, not always, but a lot of the times. And he loses the ability to be the Thing. And so they have to hire a replacement, and they have to hire, well, they decided to hire, who else but a hero for hire, Power Man, Luke Cage. It's an early appearance of Luke Cage in comic books. I mean, he already had his book going on, and this, I think, was to help people who didn't know who he was, then they knew who the Fantastic Four was, to give him some exposure. That would be one of the reasons, but it's also a good storyline, and I like it. What am I doing with this one? I've forgotten. Oh, is this 177? This is 177. It is 177. 177 is the first appearance of a character called Texas Twister. No big thing. He's been around. Actually, he showed up in the Avengers, and when I do the Avengers, I think he's one of the initiative teams from out in Texas. I actually like that team. I think there's a lot of potential for that team. Anyways, this is the first time that the Texas Twister shows up. There is a good YouTube channel out there called Casually Comics. Sasha, I think that's her name, posed the question, to talk about unlikely friendships in the superhero genre, like Green Arrow and Green Lantern. That would be one of them. Power Man and Iron Fist. The Thing and Tigra. You can check out throughout the books that they've been in together, and there have been, I don't know, a dozen or so, maybe more now. But they seem to have a good rapport between each other, respecting each other for who they are, not asking one thing or another from them, and just actually enjoying each other's company. It is an odd friendship, but every time that I see the two of these characters together, they seem to have a genuine affection for one another, not romantically or anything like that, just in friendships. They're happy to see one another and happy to help out. That would be my call for one of the stranger friendships, unexpected friendships. Agatha All Along and the Salem 7. Well, here is the first appearance of the Salem 7 in this issue here. It was all leading up to issue 200. And in 200, you have Reed Richards versus Dr. Doom. This is one of the greatest, conflicts is between these two. I don't think this cover is all that spectacular. I enjoyed the story leading into it. I mean, it was an interesting, almost 10-issue lead into this, where the group themselves had disbanded, and for a period of time we would read stories that were individual. There was a story that was based on Johnny Storm, a little bit about the rest of the team, but this was a Johnny Storm solo story. Then there was a couple of issues devoted to the Thing, another couple for Sue Storm, and then the final set for Reed Richards and the reuniting of the team, because now they're up against Dr. Doom. A good way to have an anniversary issue. 205. This is written by Marv Wolfman, who had just come off finishing writing the series Nova. Nova had been canceled by the time, I think. Yes, it would have been by the time this came out. But he still liked the idea of Nova. I still think he had things to do. The Sphinx shows up in an issue, 1 or 2 issues from now. But this is the first Nova Corps. And it could have been that's where he was trying to get to eventually. Before the series got canceled, but this is the first appearance of the Nova Corps in issue 205 of Fantastic Four. I often wonder about writers when they have a character or characters that they've been working on and that they appreciate. Chris Claremont is one of those. If during any time that he's been writing on the X-Men, if he writes another book, often you will see the X-Men show up in that book. Maybe not the entire team, but 1 or 2 characters here or there tend to make their way into a Chris Claremont book that is not the X-Men. And I wonder if Marv Wolfman was doing the same thing. This is the first appearance of Herbie. So there was a TV show back in the 70s, and the rumor was that the Human Torch had to be replaced because they were afraid that kids were going to try and be the Human Torch and set themselves on fire. That's just a rumor. That's not why the Human Torch did not show up in the kids' cartoon. It was because he was optioned out to a different studio for a different solo movie project that never happened. So he couldn't be used for the cartoon because different studios. So instead of that, and because it was the Fantastic Four, and there needed to be 4 of them, they created this robot Herbie to go along with him. Herbie lasted a few issues here in the Fantastic Four. From what I understand, he's coming back in maybe the Doom film, perhaps? I don't know. But this is the first appearance of Herbie the Robot. And that's issue 209. 211, this is the first appearance of Terrax. He's a Herald of Galactus. As opposed to the Airwalker way back from issue 120, Terrax has actually had an effect on the Marvel Universe and has shown up a number of times. And he's a far more interesting and better character. We're already into the 200s, so I know that this one does cost a little bit more, but it's a, in my opinion, a better purchase than the Airwalker. You can get a really top-notch quality one of this for a lot less than you could for the Airwalker. Last one, and I know this video is long, and my apologies for that. I'll try not to make them so long. This is issue 213, is the last issue of 1979, December 1979. And then next year, we begin in the, I guess we call it the Copper Age. We'll just look at it from a decade to decade. We'll do the whole 1980s. I'm not sure when I'm going to do Fantastic Four Part 3, but this was Fantastic Four Part 2, the Bronze Age. So overall, a good read, a good solid read all across the board. There were some really dud books in there, but there was some really fine writing as well. And I did like the artwork throughout most of it. I don't really have any complaints about the artwork. You have some covers that are done by different artists as well. I believe Steranko did some, and possibly even Neil Adams. As far as the collection goes, it goes into your Fantastic Four collection. Parts of it may go into your George Perez collection. There are guest stars, as I say, there was the Hulk and there's the Inhumans and some other people make it. There's villains, Doctor Doom, Galactus, Annihilus, and as I say, so there's blocks of characters that you could follow, and you'd have to pick up some of these books from the Fantastic Four. As far as speculation, I think, as I said, all of these books, again, they're going to cost you, depending on where you are, the further you get away from number 1, the less expensive the book becomes. But the early, what we'll call the Bronze Age stuff, that is going to be anywhere from 20 to 50, depending on the book itself, 75, even upwards of 100 if it's a 9 something or other and it's some significance, possibly like the Airwalker issue. And but if I was to look at any of them, I would be looking at the issue that contained Thundra, which would be 129, I believe. I would look for the glossy insert one. I don't think that's high on anybody's list. So find a nice sharp copy of that. I think is worthwhile. I think the Terrax is a good book to pick up. The Novacore is fine too, but and the Frankie Ray is a decent pickup. And I like the second Hulk book that I showed you, issue 167. I think that's a better cover. Market doesn't say that. Market says, no, we like number 112 better than 167. Well, you go ahead, Market. But I like 167 better. And I would be interested in that one if I was speculating. As far as investment is concerned, that means putting it into a slab with a little 9 up in the corner or whatever number you want up there. I don't do a lot of investment. I barely touch that at all, so I don't think I can say anything about investing in this particular era. I think it's still relatively affordable, and I think it's worth it to look at some of those books and see if you can pick up those if you're interested in that kind of thing. Again, I'm not going to give you any market advice because what do I know? Nothing. Overall, I'm a Fantastic Four fan, so I appreciate all of these books, and I appreciate the books moving forward. It's worth a read, and there are some good books for a collector. Well, till next time, we'll talk to you people.